Hello everyone and welcome back to another edition of Indie Book Review, where today I am reviewing There and Never Ever Back Again, A Dark Lord's Diary by Jeff Mach. I think it's Mach. Mach? Mash? M-A-C-H. Pretty sure it's Mach. Anyway, I am reviewing this book. I just read it. Actually just finished it today, so not wasting any time with this review. And let's just get into this. So, first out of the gate, we're going to get into plot. But since this isn't really a plot-driven story, in fact, there's not really much of a plot to it, it's more of a style in which it's written. Like it's written kind of as a diary with a little bit of snippets of letters. It's not really the sort of thing that can really be deciphered as a plot. Like there are a little bit of plot structure to it. Like you got the Dark Lord and the Chosen One, and the stuff that goes on there. But for the most part, this book is the Dark Lord and her thoughts, and just how she came to power, and basically her thoughts on all the other races and how they're all just going about their lives doing everything in kind of the worst way possible, and how she herself became the Dark Lord. Honestly, I can't really give this one any sort of points for being for the plot in any way, but I also don't feel right taking anything away from it because the plot is not the point. The point is everything in between. It's the subtle nuances that are in the story and in the words themselves. So I'm actually not going to put this as plot. I'm going to actually rank this one as style, and I'm probably going to do that for future books too, plot/style, much like I do with research and imagination. So plot and style, plot and or style, and for plot and or style, or for the style in this case, I'm gonna give this one a straight up 5 out of 5. Like it does a fantastic job of what it is and what it does, and honestly, I really don't have any complaints toward that. Like it does just a fantastic job at what it is. Next, we have characters. Now, there really are only 2 characters in this book. Technically there's more, but they're not really characters that get any sort of real time. They're mostly mentioned by either the Dark Lord or by the Chosen One herself. And that's like the White Wizard, the Dwarf, and I think there's probably an elf in there too. There's a whole bunch of other characters. But it mostly focuses on the Dark Lord and all of her thoughts, and the Chosen One, and her continual going through her roles and just seeing all the bullshit and not being afraid to call it out and tell it for what it is. Like she's pretty much on the White Wizard's case almost right from day one, and the Dark Lord is kind of loving this at the same time. She doesn't want to die, and basically what it all comes down to is the Dark Lord, the Chosen One, and everything else just feels real. They feel like they're actual people. Like there are some caricature stylings to them, but it's fantasy. Like what can you really expect? But the Chosen One doesn't fit the Chosen One role normally. Like she's not this wide-eyed person that the author is using as a means of exploring the world. You've got the Dark Lord for that, and all of her philosophical musings. So the Chosen One just feels like a style of Chosen One. The Dark Lord is definitely a different style of Dark Lord than anything that I've ever seen. The Dark Lord just is a different person than what society would typically be okay with. She's a little too curious. She's a little too outgoing. She's a little too of everything that society tends to not be okay with. She's not a bad person. I mean, her morality is a little on the grayer side, a little on the darker gray side, but she's not really a bad person. Like she doesn't kill for the love of killing. She does it if she has to. I mean, really, for a Dark Lord, she's actually kind of nice. Anyway, for characters, I mean, I could go on and on about these characters. They are really, really well written. I'm going to give this one straight up a 5 out of 5. I'm very impressed with it. The writing. So like I said, this is written as a sort of journal. There's some letter stuff in there, and There's a couple snippets from the Chosen One's journal as well, and it does something that I've never seen in journal stories or journal books or anything like that, and it doesn't focus heavily on dialogue. In fact, there's very, very little dialogue in it, and what dialogue is in it does actually have this little postscript in it with the Chosen One saying, I don't actually know what they said verbatim, so I'm kind of just paraphrasing it, and I love that so much. So many journal stories have entire conversations, word for word, and you're supposed to be under the assumption that whoever is writing it actually, well, remembers all of it. And anyone who's ever tried to recall an entire conversation can tell you that's just not how this works. And it's just one of those few things that my suspension of disbelief just cannot overcome. So with that little bit of postscript right in there, with the very, very little bit of very little dialogue that's in it, bravo on that one. Like, I definitely love that. And as for everything else in terms of the writing, like, it's simple, it's easy to follow. I don't have to, like, I didn't find myself running to any dictionaries, and before any literature person is all like, oh, but no. Good stories should be easy to follow. You shouldn't have to run to a dictionary to understand what's being said. It's actually more part of the reason why I couldn't get into Anne Rice or Jane Austen, because they're kind of, the writing in and of itself is a little too full of themselves. This one is definitely not. This story knows what it is and is okay with what it is, and that is so, so refreshing. So writing, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5. Like, I was very, very happy with it. Imagination and research. So I wasn't entirely sure what this story was at first. Like, I wasn't entirely sure if it was a comedy, if it was satire. Basically what this book is it's a subversion of basically every possible fantasy trope. And I'm not going to mention all of them here, because you're going to actually have to read this book to get all of them. But, like, the Dark Lord is not your typical Dark Lord. Your Chosen One is not your typical Chosen One. The White Wizard is not your typical White Wizard. Like, they all have those subtle nuances. They all have these things that make them seem like real people, but they're also not what you would expect from these sorts of characters. Or even the world in and of itself. The orcs are really not evil. They just don't really have any love for people, because through people's inborn prejudices, chase them into the underground. Much like trolls and goblins and, so many other creatures. This is not what you would expect from any sort of fantasy, and I love that. Fantasy in and of itself tends to be very much a cut and paste story style and world building and stuff like that. It is very cut and paste. Elves typically are one way. Dwarves are one way. Humans are one way. The Chosen One, the Dark One, the White Wizard. Like, they all kind of have their roles in fantasy. And the method of storytelling is how fantasy gets going. It's the story itself, not the world. And even what little bit of world building is different, it's got a lot of similarities to it. Like, and it's fine. It really is fine. Like, Wheel of Time is still a fantastic book, or it's still a fantastic series, despite hitting every single possible fantasy trope that they can possibly hit. It's still very much loved. Same as a lot of other fantasy stories. They are just very much loved, almost because of the continual hitting of the tropes. This book goes through as many as possible and subverts them, and I really love that. And it takes a lot of imagination and a lot of research to be able to do that. Not just to do that, but to do it properly, to actually pull it off. So I'm going to give Imagination and Research a 5 out of 5. Like, I was really, really impressed with that. I was really happy with it. And despite it being somewhat of a comedy, somewhat of a satire, very much a subversion of the entire fantasy genre, yeah, definitely happy with it. Next up, we have the ending. I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm going to go through kind of the vagueness of it. And then after that, I will do the spoilery bit. That way, you don't have to skip ahead. So, the ending. The ending, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of saw it coming, at least a little bit. It's not that it's blatantly obvious or anything like that. It's not like the author didn't do a good job of trying to hide the ending, especially since it is kind of a bit of a surprise ending in and of itself, but also at the same time it's really not. It's kind of hard to explain, but it was so expertly done. Like, I was, like, despite seeing how it was going to happen, I didn't get everything right. So, definitely okay with that. For the most part, I really have no problem with the ending. Like, I really have I have nothing to add to it. Ending gets a 5 out of 5. And with that, this is where I'm going to go into spoiler territory. Yeah. So, it goes through some of the main fantasy tropes of, the good guys come in, there's a battle, it kind of goes back and forth for a little bit until eventually the humans win and they all storm the castle. And eventually the Chosen One makes her way to the Dark One. Now, you're all expecting the Chosen One to plunge her dagger into the Dark One's heart, which had been removed to bring on a certain level of immortality, like not permanent immortality, and the Dark One doesn't going for full immortality anyway, because it gets boring, and you really lose a lot of stuff like empathy, and the Dark Lord's not all about that. She just wanted a bit more of an elongated life, which fair enough. But anyway, you're kind of expecting this one thing, and then the Chosen One opts to eat the heart. Didn't see that one coming. Did not see that coming at all. And the Chosen One then becomes the new Dark Lord. The old one died. The one who we got to know throughout the book died. And the Chosen One becomes the new Dark Lord. Now, we don't know what happens after that, because, well, the Dark Lord died. And, yeah, we don't know if the White Wizard is still alive or not. We don't know what's going on there, or what's happening with the armies of man. Hard to say, really. And I kind of like that, the ambiguity at the ending of this book. I do. I really like it. It's not the sort of thing that I would expect or be okay with every book, but the way this one was set up, the way this one was written, I'm okay with it. I'm happy with it, and I genuinely enjoyed it. I put the book down and was satisfied. So yeah, like I said before, the ending gets a straight up 5 out of 5. I'm very happy with it. But anyway, that's all I got for you guys. I hope you go down and actually read this book. I hope you buy this book and read it and enjoy it as much as I did. If there's anything you'd like me to read, let me know in the comments below. I'm definitely open for suggestions. And yeah, have a good one, everyone.